Today is December 21st, 2011. My name is Dr. Michael Berna, and I am here today on behalf of the Library of Congress Veterans History Project, a project that captures and archives the oral histories of the men and women who served in one or more of our nation's conflicts. We are in Monessen, Pennsylvania, at the Monessen Heritage Museum today to interview Mr. Stephen Chromulak, a retired veteran of the United States Air Force. Welcome, Mr. Chromulak, and thank you for agreeing to share your military experiences with the rest of the nation.
Thank you.
Mr. Chromulak, let's start with a little bit of background information, beginning with where and when you were born.
Well, I was born in the Charleroi-Monessen Hospital in North Charleroi, Pennsylvania, in November 25th, 1942. And I was reared in Monessen, went to Monessen Public Schools, went to church in Monessen at St. John's Russian Orthodox Church, and graduated from Monessen High School. Okay. And upon graduating from high school, I immediately went into the Air Force.
And what made you do that? What made you make that decision?
Well, I'm really not sure what the driving force was. All my relatives worked in the steel mills, some in Denor, some in Monessen, and everybody could get me into the mill. And I had a long conversation with my dad, and I told my dad that I just didn't think I wanted to work in the mill. I thought there were other things out there that I would rather do. Not that there was anything wrong with working in the mill. I just didn't think it was for me. So I decided in my senior year that I would go into the military, and I decided to go into the Air Force. I had belonged to the Ground Observer Corps here in Monessen.
And what is the Ground Observer Corps?
Well, during World War II and after World War II, it's a bunch of people who were airplane spotters. And during the war it was important because they were looking for enemy aircraft. And we had a booklet, and it listed all of these aircraft. And although World War II was over and Korea had come, and well, I don't remember if Korea was over or not, but we were still doing the Ground Observer Corps thing, and there were probably about 7 or 8 of my friends. We were all together in this thing. Mm-hmm. And that kind of drove me, I think, to look at the Air Force real hard, and then I decided that that's what I would do.
Any of your other friends that were spotters, did they take the course of going to the Air Force?
I did have another friend that I graduated with. He wasn't in the same Ground Observer Corps unit that I was in. I lived on Summit Avenue in Monessen, and my friend lived up in the Park Plain. And he and I enlisted together. Okay. Our local recruiter was Santo Restivo. And Santo has since passed away. A very, very nice gentleman. In fact, I'm very good friends with his brother Jim. We're in the VFW and American Legion together. I just thought going into the Air Force was something I wanted to try. So.
Mm-hmm. And so you enlisted, and where did you leave out of and go to?
Well, when I enlisted, I got orders to go to the Allegheny County Airport, and I got on an airplane there, and the airplane went from Pittsburgh to Tennessee, where we picked up some other people, and then we went to San Antonio, Texas. And I was in boot camp, Lackland Air Force Base, San Antonio.
Right, that's the boot camp for
right.
the Air Force.
And boot camp at that time was 8 weeks.
Okay.
So I did my boot camp, and I guess like most new recruits, most kids who come from a rural area, not knowing what to expect, I was scared silly. And my overwhelming thought at that time was, you know what? I don't want to wash out of boot camp. And that would be the most embarrassing thing. I mean, because everybody goes through boot camp, but there are some people who don't make it.
Right.
And I don't want to be one of those. So I did the best I could. I persevered and went through boot camp. I got my orders upon completion of boot camp to go to technical school at Chanute Air Force Base.
And Chanute is where?
Chanute is at Champaign, Urbana,
Okay.
Illinois. It's where the University of Chicago, or University of Illinois is.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went there for my technical training. And at that early time, this was 1960. Now, the Astronaut Program was very new, and space was very new. The Russians had launched a Sputnik in '58, as I recall. President Kennedy had said that he wanted us to go to the moon in that decade. And so I had an opportunity to go into a field where I would be working with pilots. Well, I couldn't be a pilot, not a military pilot, because I hadn't completed college. At that time, you had to complete college. So I went into what they called aircrew life support systems. And I got to work with all the equipment that the pilots used. And the longer that I was in this, the more sophisticated the equipment became. And I had an opportunity to actually test some of the equipment. So they would send you to, we call it the altitude chamber, where they make sure you're physically fit to fly.
Mm-hmm.
And went to the altitude chamber, and I got my wings, if you will, and just started out doing things. And I was real interested in the programs. I was stationed at the Duluth Municipal Airport when I finished my technical training.
And what was the chamber all about? What was that?
Well, it's like a bariatric pressure chamber.
Okay.
It takes you up and gives it simulates you being at altitude. You have an oxygen mask on, and there are instructors in there, and then you take your oxygen mask off so that you can experience hypoxia. You'll know what your particular symptoms of hypoxia are.
Okay.
Then you get to put your mask back on, and so it gives you a good idea what the physiology is of actually flying at high altitude in an aircraft. Well, when I went to my first field assignment, which, as I said, was Duluth Municipal Airport, they later changed it to Duluth International Airport. We had support airplanes there, C-47s, T-33s, but our primary airplane was the F-106. And the Air Force came down with new directives, and things looked like they were going to start heating up again, and Korea had taught us some lessons. So we wanted to make sure all of our people were trained well. So the Air Force reestablished some of the old survival schools that they had. So I had an opportunity to go to these survival schools and become an instructor myself. And I got back to my field assignment, and I picked a couple of people to assist me, and then I started training the pilots that we had. And we would train them in everything from ejecting or bailing out of an aircraft, depending on what kind of aircraft it was, parachuting techniques, safely getting yourself back on the ground, escape and evasion, survival, and rescue. And so it got to be a pretty interesting set of parameters to fall into, and that later developed into a lot more things that the Air Force wanted to do. But at that time, that's where we were limited. And being in Minnesota, it was nice because in the summertime, I had a terrific boss. His name was Bill Hegmeyer. He was a captain, and he's one of those guys that knew everybody. So he called the local power company. They owned this lake, and they had an island in the middle of the lake. And he was able to negotiate with them so that we could do our survival training in this lake off of that island.
Huh.
And so they let us use it for 2 weeks, and we ran all of our pilots through there. Now, when they came out for survival training, the pilots would come out and spend 2 full days and 1 night. They'd be there for the day, they'd be there for the night, and they'd be there most of the next day. And so we got to do a lot of things. We taught them water survival. And of course, because we were in Minnesota, in the winter, we got to teach them Arctic survival. And so we had a lot of fun, and it was very interesting. And when you teach things, you learn a lot yourself.
Well, I was going to ask you, how do you become a trainer for that? Because obviously you have to go through all that yourself.
You do.
And so how do you get chosen to be a trainer?
Well, in most cases, you volunteer. I volunteered for a lot of things. The old military adage is don't volunteer for anything. But, I just one of those people that I like a challenge, and I want to do something that maybe everybody doesn't get the opportunity to do. So I volunteered, and I went to water survival, Arctic survival, mountain survival, went down to jungle survival, and it's very, very interesting. I mean, you do a lot of things that you've never even thought about doing, and you learn a lot of things from people who just in the normal course of their life do things that we never thought of doing, but we thought, this is a terrific survival element to have in here. Mm-hmm. And jungle survival was one of the really unique things.
How so?
Well, we did our jungle training down in Panama in the Canal Zone. And some of the Indians, the natives that lived there, were teaching us some of the things they did. And they would get a little fishing hook and put a little bit of bait on it. And they had various things they used for bait, and they would throw it out. And a bird would come in, go at the bait, and they would get the hook. And they would snag the bird. So now you've captured something to eat.
Right.
So you bring it over, and they take it, and they just slice it down the center, and they gut it, get some water, clean it out, close it back up, pack it with mud, cover it in leaves, and put it in the fire for a couple hours.
Huh.
Not only did they do that with the birds, they did that with the fish. You just pack it with mud and wrap it in leaves. Well, after a couple hours, you pull it out. The mud has turned to like stone, it's clay. You bring it out, you crack it, and when you pull it off, the skin, the feathers, or the skin and the scales, everything just comes right off of it, and your food is there. It's ready to eat.
How fascinating.
It was amazing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It was amazing.
So the Native Americans, and these were, what tribe was this?
I don't remember what these were South American Indians down
Indians.
in the Panama Canal Zone.
Okay.
And it was just it was wonderful. I would never thought of anything like that.
No. Now, how long did you do this kind of training, and then where did you go after this training?
Well, I did the jungle training before I went to Vietnam, which was my assignment following Duluth.
Okay.
And while I was at Duluth, let me just regress for a moment here. While I was at Duluth, I had wanted to go to some specialized training that I knew NASA was doing, and the Air Force just kept telling me that training wasn't available. There's no such thing. You couldn't go. So I wrote a letter to my Congressman John Dent and to my Senator Hugh Scott, and told them about my desire to go to this school. And I had the course number and everything and where it was. And I got a letter before I went to Vietnam saying that I would be afforded the opportunity to go, when I was available.
Mm-hmm.
but I had orders to go to Vietnam.
Okay.
So I went to Vietnam, and we had a lot of interesting experiences in Vietnam.
Share some of those with us.
Well, when I went over there, I was assigned to a crew. We were building Cam Bay at the time, and everybody went over. It didn't make any difference what your job designation was. Everybody was a laborer.
Mm.
Okay. The guy in charge of the laborers was a lieutenant colonel. I mean, he was out there in the field with us. So, I mean, everybody. It didn't make any difference what rank you were out there. This place had to be built, and we were doing it. There was a lot of manual labor involved. Well, once we got it up and running, then I was reassigned to the 1st Air Commando Squadron at Pleiku. We had A1s there. And as soon as I got there, one of the missions that we had, one of our pilots, I guess old age takes my memory away. One of our pilots received the Congressional Medal of Honor for rescuing another pilot. He had a little A1E that he landed up at the Ashaw Valley, and I remember he picked up Jump Myers. He kind of just stuffed him in the airplane because there wasn't a seat, and took off. And Bernie, I can't think of his last name, but we had those kinds of things that kind of set the stage for us. And we came under fire a couple of times at Pleiku. Fortunately, I was never injured or didn't have any problems like that. But we flew a lot of different kinds of missions. We had the company there with us, Air America, and everybody knew who Air America was. You just couldn't say who Air America was, the CIA. So we helped them with their equipment on their planes, and then we had our own planes, and we flew psych warfare. We flew ground cover, because we had a wide variety of aircraft that we had at Pleiku there, and it was all part of the 14th Special Operations Wing out of Da Nang, not Da Nang. Well, I was on the coast. I can't.
What was psych warfare?
Psychological warfare is we would go up, and we had U-1 aircraft, and they had big speakers built into the sides of some of them. And we would go up and fly over areas where we knew that the enemy were located, and we would play tapes telling these people that they need to surrender to us, join our side, because these other people are, the bad guys are just doing this, that, and the other, and so we played a lot of these tapes for them, and we played some of like their local music to get their attention, mm-hmm. And then we would play the other tapes telling them why they should come and join the South, and, rather than be associated with the North. And we also had leaflet drops that we would do. We had big bundles of leaflets that we would just throw out of the plane. Mm-hmm. And some of the leaflets were, if you turn yourself in and you bring this with you, that they will give you cash. Mm-hmm. So. Mm-hmm. So.
And these planes had to be flying fairly low then.
They were.
And were they vulnerable to shootings? Were they? We
got shot up all the time. We were taking hits left, right, and center. We would sit on flak jackets. We would have flak jackets on. In the early days, a light aircraft, you just can't armor it, right? Because it would never get off the ground. Mm-hmm. A fast airplane, a big airplane, you have a little bit better chance. But the small airplanes that we used for psych warfare, you couldn't do that. We had a wide variety of airplanes, and we did a wide variety of things. Mm-hmm. And our base there was we had the Army that was there with us. We had the 18th Surgical Hospital. They were located just across the road, and they were like literally part of us. It's like being in a neighborhood. You're on one side of the street, they're on the other side. Mm-hmm. And we had the Korean White Horse Division in there with us. We had some Navy and some Marine guys that were down the road from us, but they were still pretty close to us. And in the evenings, when you had like free time, everybody worked the shifts, so you had free time.
Okay.
And when you had your free time, you would go to the club. There was a little club, everybody have a drink and relax. And you'd meet all these other guys, and you could do some horse trading. Sometimes the Marines would come in out of the field, and they would have like North Vietnamese flags that they captured. Mm-hmm. And everybody wanted to take one of those home for a souvenir.
Right.
Well, they wouldn't just give them up. They would trade you something. And in our situation, the only thing we could trade them was get them a ride in the airplane.
Okay.
And so we would do that. And I had negotiated a little bit of a deal with the Army commander at the surgical hospital. If you don't fly on a regular basis in combat, you just don't understand the mindset of these people and the stress that they have. Well, I negotiated a deal with the commander over the 18th Surgical Hospital. I said, if you can do something for us, we can do something for you. And he says, well, what do you got in mind? I says, well, I think it'd be a great idea if we could have a party. So you got like lots of nurses in the hospital. And we got like lots of pilots over here, we get together and we have like a cookout, a little get together. Everybody likes to fraternize. And
sure.
He thought that was a terrific idea. And I'll tell you what, Sarge, if you can get me a ride in an airplane, I don't want just a ride, I want to go on a mission. So I went back, talked to my commander, and I said, that's no big deal. So we brought him over, took him out. He flew a couple of missions with us. And we wound up having these parties like about once a month. And it's nice because it breaks up, the monotony of everything, takes a little bit of strain, the stress off of people. And
Sure.
we had a lot of fun.
Yeah, and did I hear you say you were a sergeant at this particular point
Yeah.
in time?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and what's staff sergeant?
Staff sergeant,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So, we just, we did what we had to do. The military has changed a lot since those days. In the old days, you wanted something, you did some horse trading. Mm-hmm. I needed a Jeep. There were no vehicles available. The Air Force didn't have any. So I go down to the Army. I talk to the Army motor pool sergeant. He's got a Jeep he'll give me, but he wants something. What do you want? A ride in an airplane,
Always.
So he gave me a Jeep to use, and whenever I needed gas or maintenance, I just took it to his motor pool. They took care of me, so I had a vehicle, for the most of the time I was there. Our unit somehow got 2 school buses. And, we didn't have no use for any school buses. We're not transporting people, not even troops,
Sure.
So we went back down to Cameron Bay, me and a couple other guys, and we found some Navy guys down there that had some tractor trailers. We could use a tractor trailer, so we said, we'll do a swap with you. And technically it's illegal to do that, but we met these guys halfway and swapped vehicles. We took the trucks back, and the trucks we could use. They at the port down there could use the school buses because they were transporting people. A lot of people coming in on the ships and stuff. So we wound up getting a couple of tractor trailers, and they got a couple of school buses out of the deal. And it was a lot of fun. And we did a lot of these things to kind of break up the stress of everything. Because we were under a tremendous amount of stress over there. You never knew the people that we had that would come in and clean our tents. Well, you know, they're our houseboy by day, but by night they're the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I mean, it's nothing. I mean, some of these little kids come in carrying explosives and they blow themselves and you up. You know, they don't know, they don't care.
And that was happening on the base?
It would happen on the base, off the base, yeah. So I mean, you know, finally had to crack down on it, and it got a little bit better, but still off the base. A lot of strange things happened, and you know, you really don't know why. I mean, you know who the enemy is, but when the enemy looks like the good guys,
Can't tell the difference.
you never know. Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So
And this was what year you were there?
65.
And so the war was at what point at that time? The president in '65 would have been
Was Lyndon Johnson.
Lyndon
still.
Johnson. So that was in the early part of his presidency. That was
Yeah.
before the war really escalated.
Right. When I first got there, it's kind of funny. I tell people this and they look at me like I'm a little strange, but the war was from 8 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon when I first got there. 4 o'clock came, you went back to your tent, you changed clothes, you put your civilian clothes on, you went downtown to the village. You go down there, have a couple of drinks, go to the restaurant, do whatever you're doing, and
Huh.
I mean,
That's something.
that's the way
That's
it
the
was.
first time I've ever heard of that. I've never
Yeah.
heard that before.
Yeah, because the only other military were there were the advisory groups. So you know, we just didn't have a whole lot of reason to fight the war at night. I mean, they weren't shooting at us, and we weren't shooting at them.
Okay.
So
Okay.
you know, that's what we did.
Oh, I'll be darned.
And things tightened up, as I said, after that. I mean, you know, it got to be where it was war 24/7. So, but as I said, we got hit a few times, but it wasn't that bad. Flying was one of those things that, I mean, you knew that every time you got into a plane, you were taking your chance, you know. And
Mhm.
but it's something that you did.
Now, did you fly in different types of planes yourself?
Mhm.
Okay, so what types of planes would you have flown in?
I've flown in C-46s, C-47s, U-1s, L-19s, L-20s, T-33s, F-106, F-4s, F-111s.
All of them.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. And you were piloting these?
No, I wasn't
You-
piloted, but I was in them. I was either testing equipment or we were doing something with the equipment. You know,
Okay.
that was the reason that I needed to fly.
Okay.
Sometimes we would go out and we flew in the airplane and kind of ran through a scenario just in case we had to do like a rescue or something.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we wanted to make sure that we knew whatever we're teaching these pilots, because we were still in the teaching mode, even though we were over there, you know, actually in combat conditions.
Mm-hmm.
We had to maintain the training aspect to make sure that when these pilots get up there, if they take a big hit and they got to eject, they know what to do, and it can't be you got to think about it. It's got to be second nature.
Right.
So we make sure that we instill all that in them,
Mm-hmm.
and that's one of the ways we did it. You know, I mean, we go up and actually go through as much of it as we realistically could, and then, you know, we come back and say, well, you know, you need to think about this and think about that, and, you know, you want to make sure you don't do this.
Mm-hmm. So was your whole time in Vietnam you were at Pleiku your entire tour?
Except for the first couple of months where I was at Cameron Bay.
Right. Right. And you were at Pleiku for how long?
I was at Pleiku for 14 months.
Okay. Okay. And when you left Pleiku, what was the war was going, as you said, 24/7.
The war was hot.
And then for you, then where did you get orders to go elsewhere? Did
Yes.
you ask to be transferred? How did that occur?
Well, it was kind of my time. I was supposed to leave after 12 months. Okay, and I don't remember exactly who it was, but I remember somebody approached me and said, "You know what? We don't have a replacement for you. Can you stay for a while?" You know, and I was married at the time, 3 children, and I said, "Well, okay." I said, "You know, I said I'll stay on for another 6 months." Well, I didn't have to wait 6 months.
Okay.
But they got a replacement in, and then I got him up to speed, and then I got reassigned, and I went to Langley Air Force Base, Virginia.
Okay.
And remember the letter I wrote to John Dent and Hugh Scott?
Yes.
All right. Well, when I got sent there, my squadron was the squadron that were training the astronauts.
That had to be something.
They were flying our. Now we weren't doing all of their training. We were doing segments of it, you know?
Right.
But we were doing it, and I'm going to tell you what. That's one of the highlights of my life. Not only my career in the Air Force, but my life, is to work with these guys, because we worked with them through the Apollo. The end of the Gemini and into the Apollo program, and it was a lot of fun. Met a lot of guys. Some of those guys, unfortunately, met their demise in the program, but great bunch of people, and it was so much fun.
They had to be top shelf people to be considered to be an astronaut.
Absolutely, and I mean, in the beginning, all of these guys were test pilots for the Air Force, for the Navy, for the Marine Corps, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody that was there, they were top drawer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that was interesting, and that was just a great bunch of people to be with. I'm telling you, it was.
I think the only way you would know it is to be there. I don't think that you could ever fully describe, or no one can even comprehend what that was truly like.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And how long did you do that?
Well, I was at Langley for, I think, 3 years. Okay, and during my time there, they brought the lunar lander up to the Langley facility, and I got a chance to see it, and I got a chance to fly the simulator.
Did you really?
Yeah, and I'm telling you what, that. You know, these kids today with these little joysticks and these guys, they don't know where all this started. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
It was terrific.
It sounds like a wonderful experience.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You probably hated to leave that.
Well, I did. But I was fortunate. In fact, when I left it, I didn't have to go back to Vietnam.
Well, that's a plus.
I went to Europe.
And where in Europe did you go?
I went to Bitburg,
Sure.
Germany. Yeah.
Okay.
And I was there for a couple of years, and we had EB-66s. And that's another airplane that I didn't mention that I flew in.
And those are what?
It's electronic warfare.
Okay.
Those were set up for electronic warfare. It was a bomber airplane, but set up for ELINT operations.
Mm-hmm.
And I was there, and that was mostly just training. You know, the Cold War was on. I left there.
And this was, what year was this?
Oh, jeez. Probably the end of '69, maybe '70.
Okay. Okay. So Vietnam was still going on.
Yeah. When I was at Langley, before I left Langley, is when the North Vietnamese captured the Pueblo. I think that was in '69.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and they deployed us over to Korea. So we went to Osan, Korea,
Okay.
and we took our F-106s over there.
Okay.
And, we flew out of there for, I think, 6 months.
And you were doing what at that time? What was your mission?
Well, we were sitting on alert just to make sure that the North or the Chinese didn't come down and, want to start any conflict with us, because we were there trying to get the Pueblo back, and, there was a little bit of shooting going on in the water, and, everybody hoped it wouldn't escalate, but, and it didn't, but we were on guard, so.
Now, was this the Operation Eyeball when you were flying the northern
No,
border?
that was during the Korean.
That was the Korean one.
Yeah, during the Cuban conflict.
Oh, okay, okay. So let's get back to the Pueblo incident now.
Okay.
And so were you there when they were released?
No. The period of time I was there was after they were captured. During the period they were captured, because they kept them for
Quite some time.
a long time. So we started rotating units there,
Okay.
and mine was, I think, the second unit to go over, and
Okay.
so we were there for like 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
But you asked about Operation Eyeball.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I was in Duluth on my first assignment, when the Cuban Missile Crisis broke out. And I had just gotten my wings, my qualifications to fly. Everybody was on alert, and so they took everybody who was eligible to fly, and we all got into the back seat of something, T-33 or a F-106B model or something. And we flew Operation Eyeball, and we would just go out for hours at a time and fly and just look at the northern frontier to make sure there was nothing coming over.
Constantly.
Constantly, day in, day out. We did that for about 4 days.
Hmm.
It didn't last that long.
Right.
But I'm going to tell you what. I remember the commander brought us in for a briefing, and he says, "We need all of you people to be here 24 hours a day." He says, "You need to go home, you need to explain to your family, you need to kiss them goodbye, you may never see them again."
How did you feel about that?
Oh. You just go numb. You're obligated, you have a mission. This is what you dedicated your life to do at this point. So, you have your family, but, it's not like you have to pick between your family or the military. What's the greater good? What's the big picture?
Your choice was already made. You were in the military.
Right. So, I went home, I explained to my wife. My kids were little, they didn't know. She said, "Well, don't worry." She said, "You'll be back. You'll be back." A lot of encouragement. I said, "Okay." Well, like I say, I think we were there for like 3 or 4 straight days, and finally everything kind of loosened up a little bit, and I guess Kennedy got that business straightened out with them.
Mm-hmm.
They pulled their missiles out, we pulled our missiles out, but we didn't tell nobody we pulled ours out.
Right.
So that's what Operation Eyeball was all about. And like I said, I was just 18 years old, 19 years old at the time, so it had a big impact on my life.
Impact in what way?
I realized at that time that, war isn't something that's inevitable, but it doesn't take much to get it going.
Hmm.
You think you're doing the right thing, and my ethnic background is all my grandparents came from Russia. Well, some from Czechoslovakia, but mostly Russian. And those people are the same as us. They do the same things we do,
Mm-hmm.
and so I'm trying to think, well, what is it that makes a difference? And I guess the difference is the people who were in charge. It's like anything, whether it's a business or an organization. People don't want to lose power. They want to maintain that power that they have. And so you do whatever you think you have to do. And sometimes they think it's right. Sometimes they know it's not right, but you do it. So. And I kind of got a little better feel in my mind for why these things happen. And today I can sit down, I can look at the political scheme of things, and I can see things happen. And then I try to put myself in somebody else's shoes and say, well, you know what? It's not right, but this is probably why they are doing this, you know? And, you know, what can you do to, like, change their mind? And in some cases you can do something, and in a lot of cases you just, nothing you can do.
That's a big thing to learn at 18 years old.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But I'm telling you, everyone there was just scared to death. Because, you know, and the commander didn't pull no punches. He says, you go home, get your stuff, and you tell your families that you may never be back again. You know, you may never see them again.
And so what was the dialogue amongst the men at that time when they heard that? I mean, you all had to sit around and talk about that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you know, people were talking, oh, we ought to kick their butt, you know, this, that, and the other. I mean, everybody was... we were all hyped up, you know. I mean, we were ready to go to war with them. I mean, if that's what it took, we were going. But we knew that if a war started, it was going to be a nuclear war. And anything could happen. And anything would happen, I'm sure. But, you know, like I say, it only lasted 3 or 4 days. And so it didn't take long for all the furor to die back down, and everything got back to normal, and you just kind of forgot about it.
And this is when you were back at Duluth. This was before you were...
Right. That was my first field assignment.
Okay.
That was my first field assignment, yeah.
Okay. Now, how long did it take you to get to be staff sergeant?
I made staff sergeant just before I re-enlisted the first time.
Okay.
So that was just under 4 years.
Just under 4 years. And so you were out after 4 years?
No. I stayed in, but getting promoted in the Air Force became very difficult.
Particularly to the next level, the technical sergeant level.
Right. And you couldn't, you just couldn't do anything to get yourself promoted. They changed the promotion system. They did. Now the guys in the Army didn't have any problems. They were passing them out like pancakes at breakfast, you know. So it became a matter that, you know, you were kind of upset with the system, you know. And we did a couple of things, and I got myself in a little bit of trouble there, you know, and I lost a stripe, and so I had to start back up the chain again. But I got back up there. When I retired, I was a technical sergeant. If I hadn't got myself in trouble, I probably could have got up to E8, E9, you know. But I enjoyed what I was doing. When I left Germany, I went back to Clovis, New Mexico, and I got into the F-111 program. I don't know if you were familiar with that.
Those are the jets.
Yeah, it was McNamara's Follies. It was the swing wing jet. And
I remember that.
And you know, traditionally out of aircraft, they have ejection seats. Each man's in an ejection seat, and they fire themselves out. Well, the 111 didn't have that. It had an enclosed container. The whole cockpit was ejected with both guys sitting side by side. And it literally had rockets on it and flew it out. And then it had this huge parachute, which was reminiscent of the parachutes they used on the Apollo capsules coming back.
Okay.
So it was a terrific system. unfortunately, it had some bugs in there, and a couple of people got killed because if you eject it out of the parameters, it just didn't have time to fully operate.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a very complicated system.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was all training. We trained people there, and from there they went to Vietnam. We sent 111s to Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that was near the end of the war.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, I went to England. Man, did I love England.
That puts a smile on your face.
Oh, yeah. England was terrific.
How so?
Well, I went there, and you know, number one, I didn't have to learn the language. When I went to Germany, I had to learn the language.
Okay.
You know, and even though you don't get fluent in it, you can learn it so that you're conversational. You know, and England, it was different. You went there, and you had to learn what their words meant. Okay, you know, somebody wants to do something with you, and you know they say they'll knock you up. You know, what the heck are you talking about? You know? Well, that just meant they were going to call you or come by. You know.
Yeah.
And we were talking about cars. It's funny, they talk about the wings on a car. You know, which are the fenders
Mm-hmm.
or the bonnet. You know, and
Mm-hmm.
they just had different terminology. And I was amused by it all, but I understood it all. You know, it was great. You know, you never got into an elevator, you got into a lift. You know?
Right.
But we all knew what the pint was,
Yeah.
and we would go to our local, and I lived off the base there, and at Bentwaters and Woodbridge. It was a dual bases there, and I was with the 67th Air Rescue Squadron. And our contingency was recovering the Apollo capsules. So I was back with NASA again.
Oh, you like that?
Ah, that was fun.
Mm-hmm.
That was a lot of fun.
So did you actually do the recovery?
We never had to do it because the Navy ships were always, the capsule always came down where it was supposed to.
Okay.
And they had the Navy ships there. If the capsule would have come down somewhere else,
Right.
you know, then we were out and set to go get it. One of the things we had to do, though, was the war broke out in Beirut, Lebanon, Civil War. And when it started getting pretty rough over there, they asked us to go over. We had C-130s and H-53s, and they were all designated for rescue. They were set up for rescue. And they asked us to go over and evacuate the American and British embassies in Beirut. And the way the embassies were located, there was a large soccer field between them. So one embassy was on one side and the other embassy was on the other side. Well, we flew to Cyprus and we staged out of Cyprus. We were there for almost a month. And Cyprus was nice. I mean, very, very pleasant place to be. But when it came time to do the evacuation, we flew in, and our planes, our 130s, made what we call assault landings, and they landed on the soccer field, and our helicopters went in, and we had people, and we were ushering people out of both embassies to the soccer field. And of course we had the bad guys who were like trying to shoot over the walls, and you know, it was pretty exciting. I mean, it wasn't as bad as Vietnam, but still, you know, we were scared. And we took a bunch of hits in the planes.
Did you?
know? Yeah, we had a little patching up to do when we got back. But it was interesting. We got everybody evacuated, so that was good.
That's
And
a pretty small space to land in a C-130 into that space.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you got to remember, a soccer field isn't just the size of a soccer field. There's usually 2 or 3 of them there.
Oh, okay. Okay.
You know, so it's like a football field, maybe a little bit bigger.
But it's probably just enough space to land and to take off.
Just enough, yeah, because you know they had to take Jado bottles on the airplane for when they took off, and you know use the Jado bottles to get the airplanes up.
And a Jado bottle is what?
That's a jet assist takeoff.
Okay.
Because they're props, turboprops.
Okay, got you.
And so it was pretty exciting.
Yeah, yeah.
Pretty exciting.
And your total time in the military was how many years?
Almost 21 exact.
21.
Yeah.
And so, at the end of your career, what were you doing towards the end of your career?
I left England, and I wanted to go back to Clovis, New Mexico, but there wasn't an opening there, so I decided to go to Shreveport, Louisiana, Barksdale Air Force Base, which was a SAC bomber base. They had B-52s there.
Okay.
So I went there, and again, the mission was training.
Mm-hmm.
So we were training all the air crews, and I got to fly on B-52 twice. So
That had to be awesome.
I'm telling you, it's scary. I mean, because you get in that airplane and it starts rolling down the runway, and like in most airplanes, you know, we're up already, and we're still rolling down the runway. and you never, the airplane doesn't rotate, if you know what I mean. You know, how when you're going in like a commercial plane,
Yeah.
you get down there and they pull the nose up like this, and then it takes
Yeah,
off. That's
yeah.
that's what they call a rotation.
Okay.
B-52 doesn't do that. It just goes down and just starts, you know, and you're waiting for it to, nothing's happening, but you're already off the ground, don't know it. The guys
Yeah.
in the front know it, but
Yeah, you don't know it. You don't know it. Yeah.
yeah, it's a lot, very, very interesting.
So then, when you came out of the military, what was that adjustment like? I mean, you'd spent quite a bit of time in the military, and then to come back into civilian life, did you miss the military when you left it?
I did a little bit, but it wasn't a very difficult transition.
Okay.
And I think one of the things that was good is that because I had made a career out of the military and I stayed in, I didn't come back home to a lot of people who were disgusted with me because I was in Vietnam, or you know, I didn't have to put up with that stuff.
Right.
That happened in some places, you know, but you know, that was a rare occasion.
Mm-hmm.
So the adjustment was good. I didn't have any problem with the adjustment. I wanted to get home, wanted to relax, and
Mm-hmm.
find myself a career for the rest of my good working days.
And at what point in your career then did you finally make tech sergeant?
I made tech sergeant when I was in England.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I made it when I was in England. In fact, it was right after that Beirut thing.
Okay.
And I also, at that time, while I was there, me and a couple other people got together and we started riding our motorcycles together. So I kind of initiated this thing of starting a motorcycle club. And we had a bunch of military guys, we had some civilian guys, and I went and I approached the wing commander there, and I asked him if it was possible for us to, I said, you know, we want to start a club, but we don't have any place to meet. Could we use one of the buildings, you know, on the base? So he couldn't give us permission. He had to go to higher headquarters, and they had a whole lot of questions, and they come back. And we said, well, you know, the object of starting this motorcycle club is to teach motorcycle safety. And well, once we did that, then everybody had a big smile on their face. And so we did that, and we had all across the spectrum of military people. We had senior officers, field grade officers, company grade officers, senior enlisted people, NCOs, junior enlisted people, everybody in this club. And I went around, and I didn't realize it at the time, but I put my marketing skills to work, I'd go out and I'd talk to these people who had motorcycle shops, and I said, we're having a club. I says, would you like to sponsor us? I said, if you sponsor us, I said, what it would entail would be giving any of our members that wanted to buy something a discount here. I says, that way they would come to your shop, And we went around to a lot of different places and did that. And then some of our guys decided they wanted to do different types of competition, like trials competition and stuff. And so some of the shops would sponsor them, our club name and their business name, and it was real good. We even had a steamship company that would ship your motorcycle back to the United States for you, at a cut rate. So
these were English bikes, Nortons and
mostly
Triumphs and
yeah, right,
mm-hmm.
Mostly. And before I left, I negotiated an agreement with the Association of Advanced Motorists. I don't know if you ever heard of that or not, but it's an organization in England that if you take their test, and their test is the gold standard, if you take their test, you can get a reduction of up to 25% on your insurance. Well, that was only open to British citizens. So one of the people that was, he was an executive with the Institute of Advanced Motorists. I got to know him, and he was knighted and everything, And, so we went in. I met with their committee, and I told them that I would like our motorcycle club to be the first motorcycle club in all of Europe to do this, and to allow foreign nationals to take this test to get the insurance, and that we would train them and prepare them for this test. And so they agreed. Well, before I left there, the British and American embassies gave me an award, the Anglo-American Award for the year.
I wondered about that award.
Yeah.
I saw that on there, and I hadn't heard of that before.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it, as a matter of fact, I gave the Historical Society a lot of the newspaper articles from over there that were on there. But that was a lot of fun, and I enjoyed that tremendously.
Well, Mr. Chromulak, you've had a very diverse and interesting career, where some careers are just in the military are very linear, but you went from this to that to that to that, and you took the initiative, especially to write that letter to get on board with the Astronaut Program, and to get that opportunity. Certainly, as you say, one of the highlights of your life.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I just commend you for all that you've done for the United States Air Force and for the service for your country, and we certainly appreciate what you've done. I'd like to ask you, is there something you would like to say in closing today?
Well, I think that going into the military was probably one of the best opportunities, and making a career out of the military is probably one of the best kept secrets that I think there is. College is not for everyone. Okay, going to a trade school is not for everyone. But when you go into the military, you can find yourself and decide which path you want to take. And being in the military, I was able to travel all over Europe. I got, and I loved it. I went all over the world. I saw things that you only read about in books or see in movies. And I think it's just the greatest opportunity that there is. And that's just a little sidebar to the patriotism of it all, you do it because you want to do it for your country.
Well, I think that's a really important message for people to understand, especially in this day and age when people are struggling, and young people struggle for what to do with the rest of their lives. And what the addition that you just presented in your oral history here, that would go well for someone to listen to something like that. So I think that's a very fine concluding statement. And once again, on behalf of our country, we thank you for your service to our country and appreciate what you've done, and happy to hear that it was a wonderful experience for you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That concludes our interview for today.